Hey everyone, it's Lori, and I'm here today with a book review. And the book I'm going to be discussing is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, A Therapist, Her Therapist, and Our Lives Revealed by Lori Gottlieb. This was published in 2019, and I would kind of categorize it as a bit of a memoir. So basically, this book is the story of when Lori Gottlieb, who herself is a therapist, ended up seeking out her own therapist to help her get through her breakup. She had been in a relationship that she thought was going to end in marriage, and she kind of suddenly has this relationship implode, and she doesn't know what to do. So she started to seek out a therapist. So one of the fascinating things about a memoir about a therapist seeking out a therapist is all of the little details you don't think about in terms of conflicts of interest. So even finding a therapist as a therapist can be difficult because you can't have any sort of professional conflict. So you couldn't go to somebody that you referred patients to. You couldn't go to somebody who was in the same group as you, that you took other cases to. So that is kind of her first stumbling block, is finding a therapist. So of course, she also doesn't really want to admit that she needs a therapist for herself. So she's asking for a referral from a therapist friend to a therapist that she wouldn't know, but she pretends she's asking for somebody else. And she specifies that she would like to see a married male therapist, or the person she's looking for, which is herself. And so she kind of goes into it hoping that this married male therapist will be like, oh yeah, your ex-boyfriend is just a total slime ball. But he doesn't do that, because that's not what therapy is about. It's not about blaming your problems on somebody else. So she kind of brings a lot of baggage to being a patient as a therapist at the same time as she is dealing with her own therapy patients. And so it's kind of an interesting narrative going back and forth between her being therapist to patients who aren't always super cooperative in helping her help them, and then going to her own therapist and basically doing similar or worse things in her own therapy sessions for her own problems that some of her clients are doing in theirs. So it's just very interesting. So the chapters kind of go back and forth between her meeting with her patients and her going to her therapist. So you kind of see from chapter to chapter, something will happen in her own work as a therapist. And then the next time she goes into her own therapy, she is able to take like just a little bit more of a step towards telling the truth. So she finally kind of opens up to the fact that maybe she's not in therapy simply because her boyfriend ended this relationship. So that is like a very major step for her. And you also get to see several of her patients make similar steps in their own therapy. So it's really cool going back and forth between her work as a therapist and her work as a patient to a therapist, because both people are working in that relationship. So beyond just being a therapist, in this memoir, you kind of learn the whole backstory of Lori Gottlieb. So she had started out at a certain point, she had been working in entertainment, and then she decided she wanted to go back to school after kind of shadowing some doctors. And she thought she wanted to go back and become a doctor, so she started to do that. But she was also very interested in journalism, and just kind of the going back and forth between, do I go into medicine, do I go into journalism? And in the end, she ends up kind of being a therapist slash journalist, which is an interesting combination. But just the whole process of that, and also of her personal life. She's got some very complicated situations that you kind of start at one point. So you start at this breakup, and this breakup had to do with part of her life. So then you kind of go back and get to know how that part of her life developed. And then she also compares her own story in a lot of ways to some of her patients' stories. So she does have one terminally ill patient who she has basically promised to be with until this patient dies. And then she also has an elderly patient who doesn't feel like she has any reason to live. So you get to know all of these stories about her patients as well as about her in this memoir. So this one I feel like was a very fast book to read because it was just so compelling. There's not a lot of technical jargon. It's written at a very accessible level for the average person who may or may not have any experience in therapy or with therapists. So I do recommend that you should consider checking out Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, particularly if you are interested in the interior life of a person, because so much of what she does in this book is come to terms with kind of what deep down is weighing her down more so than the surface level things, which is where she starts. She starts at a very surface level. I had a bad breakup. I need a little help to get over it. But she goes so much deeper with her therapist. And it's just a very enjoyable book. So I would highly recommend this. I gave this 5 stars on Goodreads. Go ahead and find a copy. Mine I checked out from the library. So I would very much recommend you check out Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. So thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoy my videos, my book reviews, my book hauls, etc., please feel free to hit that subscribe button. I know that a lot of people who watch don't subscribe, and subscribing doesn't mean you have to watch every video I've ever done. It's just easier to see my videos when you're subscribed, and it also helps me be seen by more people on YouTube. Just kind of how that works. So if you have read Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, did you enjoy it as much as I did, or did you dislike it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this book in the comments below. I guess that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.